One man is responsible for the life of every second person on Earth today. Yet, he is also the father of modern chemical warfare. Fritz Haber discovered how to pull bread from thin air to feed billions. But he used that same genius to engineer the industrialization of death. How do we judge the man who saved humanity while simultaneously creating the tools to destroy it? In 1868, in the old Prussian city of Breslau, now Wrocław in Poland, a son was born to a well-to-do Jewish family. He came into a world where industry was reshaping life, where chemistry was transforming matter itself. His mother died weeks after his birth, and his father remarried. From an early age, Fritz learned what loss and expectation felt like. Young Fritz did not simply want to learn chemistry. He wanted to master it. He studied in Berlin, Heidelberg, and later in Zurich, restless, curious, and driven by a search for answers. At the dawn of the 20th century, Europe was booming, but beneath the promise was a looming question. Could the world feed its growing population? Nitrogen was everywhere, in the air we breathe, but plants couldn't use it. Fritz asked a simple, profound question. What if we could make nitrogen usable? For years, chemists dreamed of a way to take nitrogen from air and turn it into fertilizer. In 1909, after tireless work at high pressure and with catalysts, he succeeded. Nitrogen and hydrogen, once separated in the sky, were now bound together as ammonia. This breakthrough would become known as the Haber Process, a scientific revolution. What Haber gave to the world was extraordinary, a method to mass-produce fertilizer that could nurture fields across continents. Before this, famines stalked humanity. Crops failed, soil starved for nutrients. Suddenly, the invisible became abundant, and farms flourished. By one estimate, the food we grow today feeds almost half of the human population, thanks to this very process. This was a gift of life, a seed of hope sown in chemical bonds. But history rarely hands out gifts without a darker shadow. In 1914, the world slipped into the carnage of the First World War, a war of trenches and mud, of fear and terror. Haber was a patriotic German, deeply attached to his nation. When the call came to serve his country, his devotion led him down a path he would never fully escape. He shifted his brilliant mind from feeding fields to refining weapons. The same ammonia that could nourish crops could also be turned into explosives. But that was only the beginning. Haber proposed to use chemicals as weapons, attempting to break the brutal stalemate of trench warfare. At the Second Battle of Ypres in 1915, chlorine gas, heavy green, invisible, rolled over fields and battle lines. Soldiers inhaled its deadly cloud. No longer would bullets and shells alone determine fate. History now remembers Haber as a father of chemical warfare, a man whose work ushered in a terrifying new chapter of human violence. In 1918, even as war ravaged the world, the Nobel Committee honored Haber, awarding him the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for the synthesis of ammonia. The prize could have been a crown of glory, but it sat on a complicated soul, because the same genius that fed millions had also refined the tools of death. After the war, many criticized him, blaming his science for prolonging conflict and increasing suffering. Yet others argued that his process was essential to agriculture, and that chemists on all sides had been swept into the machinery of war. There is no simple judgment here. only echoes of choices made in a turbulent age. Behind the scientist was a man, a husband, a father, a human with heartbreak. His first wife, Clara Immerwahr, herself a gifted chemist and an early advocate for women in science, was devastated by his wartime work. Her tragic suicide in 1915 remains one of the most poignant personal costs of this story. Later years saw more struggles, a second marriage that ended, the rise of political tides that threatened his identity as both German and Jewish. As anti-Semitism grew in Germany, Haber resigned from his institute. He planned a new life in what would become Israel. Invited by a friend and fellow chemist, but fate intervened. He died in Switzerland in 1934 while in transit. So, how should we remember Fritz Haber? Is he a hero who helped feed billions? A villain who unleashed chemical horrors? Or something far more human, brilliant, flawed, driven by duty, and shaped by the storms of his time? Perhaps the truth is this: he was a man whose discoveries could create life and were used to take it. A reminder that science is powerful, but the choices of humanity shape how that power is used. In classrooms around the world, students learn the Haber process. In fields across continents, crops grow because of its impact. And in history, his name remains a touchstone for debate on ethics, war, and responsibility. Every great discovery carries its own paradox. The flame that warms us can also burn. Fritz Haber's story is not a simple legend of good or evil. It is a mirror, challenging us to ask, when does brilliance become burden? When does service cross into harm? And what is our duty as stewards of powerful ideas? His life reminds us that science is not separate from humanity. It is one of its deepest reflections. And so we remember, not just the man or the chemist, but the lessons his life continues to teach us about courage, consequence, and conscience.